Well, Donald Trump said in a recent Fox News interview that if he wins the 2024 election, he would declassify files, including bombshell 9/11 stuff. We're going to talk about what that could be, and really in general, candidates making these promises to declassify certain things, to pardon people. Is it legitimate? Because Trump said it several times, especially back in 2016 when he was running against Hillary. It didn't end up happening. There's a lot of complications when it comes to a lot of these promises, possibly declassifying documents. Now, believe it or not, Biden and his administration did have an executive order directing declassification review of documents related to September 11th, 2001. Now, we know the U.S. government is never going to be releasing anything in relation to 9/11 that would potentially link them to it. So declassifying documents, giving us more information about September 11th, none of that's going to come out. And you can see what Biden did here. Declassify secret FBI report detailing Saudi nationals' connections to September 11th. And this is what they normally do. They'll be like, oh, we're declassifying this. It's transparent. When in reality, this was already mainstream known, the idea of the Saudi connection to September 11th, possibly knowing it was going to happen before it did happen. I think when it comes to Trump possibly declassifying things, I would more so be interested in the documentation of the day, September 11th, because again, when it comes to the actual terrorists in the United States, people wondering, did anyone within U.S. intelligence know of this operation? There's some weird stuff, especially with Condoleezza Rice giving a briefing to Bush about a month before the attacks, saying, according to foreign intel, Bin Laden plans to strike on U.S. soil. I don't think it's going to be anything to do with that. But when it comes to what I would want to see, it would more so be the footage of September 11th, the day. And we know there was so much of it on YouTube, especially in 2007, 2008, 2009. Google really cleaned up the YouTube platform in order to appeal to advertisers. That happened like 2012, 2013 when they rebranded everything. Originally, YouTube was an app that was intertwined with Apple. You didn't even have to download it, especially, I'm sure you guys, when we were younger, the iPods, I had the iPod Touch 4th generation, 32 gigabyte. And you would just get YouTube. And if you had YouTube, that old type television little app thing, you wouldn't even have any ads on it. Now, I do pay, so I don't have ads on YouTube now, but you didn't have to pay for it. The overall point I'm getting at is that sometime over a decade ago, YouTube completely overhauled their content moderation and what was allowed on YouTube, and we lost a lot of videos related to September 11th, videos on September 11th, and documentation that people cannot find. And I would say that would be the number one thing, because again, in terms of intel and releasing files, we're just not going to get much. We're not going to get anything on US. You wouldn't think they would do that. Now they might release more stuff on, oh, Saudi Arabia this, Saudi Arabia that. That was already mainstream, and then they release it and act like they're transparent. We already knew it. That's what Biden did. And I wouldn't expect Trump, and really Trump, unless he pushes hard for it, it's not like he's going to have a lot of say over what gets released. This is all controlled, and they already know that a lot of the information they're releasing has already been found out, and it's kind of in the mainstream news algorithm at this point. It's been over 2 decades. There's obviously stuff that's going to be leaked about September 11th and the months leading up to September 11th. I will say there is some cloudiness surrounding the terrorists in Florida at the flight school and things like that I would like to know about. I'm not sure if they would release that. Again, it's probably more focused on what was happening possibly with the Hamburg cell, the Middle East, and the funding. But I would call for full transparency at this point, with it being over 2 decades old now, on the documentation in terms of the videos that we have. And technically a lot of them still are on YouTube, but there are several big ones that people think they saw. I'm sure YouTube purged a lot of videos in 2012, 2013 when they updated their policies. Again, there are still videos. As long as you find the right algorithm, you'll be able to get them. When you type in September 11th, you're not going to find them right away, just because their search results are curated and it goes to news and stuff that's not on the ground first person footage. But I would hope that the release of declassified information would possibly lead towards videos of September 11th being released. That would be very interesting in terms of the documentation. After all, this event was 1 in a million. You have two 110-story skyscrapers collapsing within 30 minutes of each other and both being hit by commercial airplanes. And this whole thing kind of leads me to the point, Trump coming out saying, oh, I'll look into pardoning Snowden. He said it back in 2016. It's a tactic to possibly get a few more votes. Many Americans, me included, view Edward Snowden as a patriot. We thank him for, obviously alerting us to what's going on. The problem that Trump's going to have, and this is the same problem that he had, I'm sure, in 2016 when he possibly talked about pardoning Snowden. If you remember, Trump was vehemently against Snowden, and then he kind of turned. And I also think leading up to the 2020 election, even though he was already in power, he said, well, maybe we'll pardon him if I win in 2020. The issue is there's a lot of people within the U.S. government that I'm sure hate Snowden with all their guts based on what he did. They view it as a betrayal, and it becomes very hard if you are the president and you do have power, but it's hard to influence that and say, no, we need to pardon him when you've got a lot of forces working against you with something like that. So I would not hold my breath. Although I do think Trump is the best chance we'll get at a Snowden pardon. Biden is completely controlled, and Trump's a little bit of a wild card. You could say, well, Trump, he was in 2016, he didn't do anything. Well, now that they're going after Trump, possibly trying to put him in prison, if he wins in 2024, it's like rattling, a beehive. He might be angry. He might just say, screw it. I'm going to do whatever I want. This is my legacy. The American people are going to like me for pardoning Snowden and possibly releasing more information in relation to September 11th. So we'll have to see what happens. Maybe we'll get another big dump if Trump wins in 2024, because he has said he's going to release information, although it was he was just agreeing with Fox News. They brought up different topics. They're like, are you going to pardon this? Are you going to release the files? And he said, yes, yes. And you could say, well, it's just because he wants votes, but I mean, we saw Biden do it, so I would expect if Trump wins in 2024, there to be at least something in terms of September 11th. But again, I do have to caution people. Normally, it's stuff that they originally hid because it was sensitive info. But now that we're over 2 decades past September 11th, a lot of this so-called sensitive info has become mainstream. And then now they'll release it because it's already mainstream and say, look, we're transparent. When in reality, we just want the videos and things like that. We know they're not going to give us anything real when it comes to U.S. intelligence possibly knowing about, in some form, the terrorists on U.S. soil. I'm not saying they did. I'm just saying in general, that would be your conspiracy. It's not the idea of, oh, they blew up the towers after they were hit, or something about the planes being flown into them by drones. Those conspiracies don't make sense. What would make sense would be U.S. intelligence, and this goes back to Condoleezza Rice warning Bush a month before September 11th happened, saying and admitting, yes, we've got intelligence, bin Laden will be striking America. They were at a summit where they had to close the airspace in July of 2001 because they were talking about somebody hijacking a plane and flying it into the summit where they were meeting at. And then 3 months later, they do it to the Twin Towers. It's crazy. So guys, we'll have to see what happens when it comes to all of this, with Trump possibly declassifying more files, maybe allowing us to make Freedom of Information Act requests that actually go through. That could be a big thing to where maybe they won't actually declassify the videos, but if you put in a request, they'll be less stringent on keeping things protected. But we really don't know. We don't know what video is out there because they purged YouTube. And again, there still is a lot of clips on YouTube, but there's some things that are missing. I wonder if those will ever see the light of day. Maybe if we can get more transparency within the government, or it could just be, let's say Trump wins in 2024 and they feed us more information about Saudi Arabia or a country within the Middle East being involved and knowing about September 11th, which I don't think would surprise anyone. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.